My show is called The Independent Republican Mike Graham because it's independent and I'm Mike Graham. But inside of that, it's all about you. It's all about the people that call into the show. It's all about what you care about because we know what ordinary people want to know.
Good evening. It is 6:05. This is Rinder. This is TalkTV live from the Talk Radio studios. We now go over the pond to our very own Professor John Christopher Buer, Prof. JC, White House correspondent at Real Political News. We've got to hit off straight away, Prof. JC, by the breaking news that 50 years of precedent has been overturned by the Supreme Court, and now 36 million women, it looks like, will not have access to abortion as 13 states in the wake of that Supreme Court judgment are very much about to outlaw abortion. This is 2022. I wonder what the reaction is over there.
Well, it's a real earthquake, Rob. I don't see your lovely face, though, so I'm sure we can work that out. But I'm here, and I'm aghast. And we had literally an earthquake today with this decision where the Supreme Court has overturned Roe v. Wade, and it set America back 150 years. And you saw what the president has said. And it's really quite astounding that this is happening at this present day. But it's not unusual. And no one is surprised, because when you lose elections and when you put someone like Donald Trump in there to put in his overpacked conservative court with Coney Barrett and Gorsuch and Kavanaugh, you knew this was coming down, and you knew this is exactly what was going to happen. And here it is. But it is devastating. It is going to cause a major problem in this country, especially in an election year. And it's frightening, Rob. And who's next? I mean, Clarence Thomas wants to go after all rights that aren't in the Constitution. And if you can take this right away, which is a right, you can go after all sorts of other things.
Well, let's just talk about that for a second. The question the extent to which this is a right. I read the judgment that was leaked, and no doubt there'll be an investigation into that, the lead judgment written by Samuel Alito. And what he effectively says is that, this is not a lose for American values or rights. It's a win for democracy. If you want to pass a law, if you want to create a right, it's up to you to persuade your fellow citizens to do that. And this is a point made in the judgment, so don't shoot the messenger. It's not for 9 unelected lawyers to create that right. Go out, and we live you do, in America, you can pass a law. There's nothing wrong with that, and the Supreme Court would have no complaint about that. It's not up to unelected officials to do so. What's your response to that?
Well, I think I respect what you're saying, but I think this is just an excuse for pulling the rug out on our democracy. And this is not what these people have been instilled in the Supreme Court, because they knew exactly, and they lied, by the way, when they went through their confirmation hearing. The 3 of them lied, the Trumpers lied about that this is already case law. I mean, this is already Supreme Court precedent. We're not going to go after it. They swore not to do that, and they did.
Well, let me just stop you there.
This will break,
Prof. JC,
I break apart the U.S.
Well, I mean, I always like to sit on the happier, more optimistic side of catastrophizing. But I watched all of those confirmation proceedings, every one from Gorsuch to Kavanaugh's extraordinary one to Amy Coney Barrett's. And Amy Coney Barrett's is an interesting one. The important case actually wasn't Roe versus Wade, but was Casey, in which a Republican-appointed judge, Sandra Day O'Connor, said, listen, you've got to remember that there are reliance interests. You've got to respect precedent of the court. That's really very, very important, for want of a better way of describing it. And when Amy Coney Barrett was asked about overturning Roe versus Wade and asked whether Roe was what's called a super precedent, in other words, one that's so uncontested by people, you think of Brown versus the Board of Education, which desegregated schools, a super precedent nobody seriously thinks about overturning. She said, no, it wasn't a super precedent. So to what extent did Amy Coney Barrett lie?
Well, I don't think she was truthful. I know she was put in there for a specific reason, and I know her background. Yeah. And she got away with it. And we see Merrick Garland, who was Obama's choice. Yeah. After Obama's choice after Ruth Bader Ginsburg had passed away. And no, excuse me,
No, just before.
I'm off on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was when Justice Kennedy retired.
Justice Kennedy retired. Mitch McConnell held it up. He was in cahoots with Trump. They waited until it was too late, and then they installed her in no time flat. And they didn't really understand what she was about. But the fact is that we now have a law that is allowing the states, and there are, I think, 26 states ready to go.
Yeah.
Where if a young girl is molested and raped by her father, it's questionable whether or not she could have an abortion. And it's not only abortion; it's women's health as well. It's if you have an ectopic pregnancy. In some states, it's considered you've aborted it. You can't take a pill.
Okay.
And
the question is, Prof. JC, you know, we've been talking week after week about how broken the branches of American government are, right? Now, a lot of this we've agreed on, which is a very important Supreme Court case that didn't limit the amount of PAC money, you know, money from lobbyists that can go into political parties and political campaigning. And that, I have to say, has had a detrimental influence on both political parties, a plague on both houses. But the question now is how you can rebuild and protect, preserve, and defend, using the language of America, your enduring democratic values. Now that the court has ruled here, what can be done at a federal and state level to protect the interests of women?
Well, I know you're referring to Citizens United, which was an amazing blow to exactly who's supporting candidates. You don't even know who's giving that kind of money.
Right.
But to answer your question, and this is to all people who are concerned, and the president came out earlier to talk about it. The only and Nancy Pelosi was adamant when she said this is going to be answered in November at the polls, and that is the only way this country will get redress. The only option now is to codify Roe v. Wade, and that only will happen when we have enough of a majority that we, meaning the Democrats, not necessarily me, because I'm for both. Have a majority where, I see you smiling, how we can actually overcome this. And the Democrats, here's my advice to them, and I have advised them, have to have an overwhelming majority of voters to overcome the shenanigans. I mean, when you look at this is even our first topic, but it was on January 6th, what Trump tried to do to thwart the vote, and he's still doing it. It's still out there in the states. He went to the federal agencies to undo that. And he'll be held in
the difficulty with all of this, Prof. JC, is it doesn't appear to be having the kind of dent, the sort of electoral impact on the Republican Party as the Democrats would like to say, the very least. You know, as you're aware, people vote on the economy stupid. That was a phrase in a previous American election. You know, the question is, coming back to Roe, this overturning of the right to an abortion and women's rights, the extent to which that translates into turnout at the ballot box, and the extent to which that will not just galvanize the Democratic base, but bearing in mind the challenges, and that's putting it mildly, of the American economy, which looks like it may be heading into recession, the extent to which there's going to be a Democratic majority, or if that's cow cuckoo land, bearing in mind the polls that we see, and of course we know in the past the past presidential elections and every other one for the last 10 years, they've been wrong. It looks like moving forward, we're expecting a GOP Republican landslide, right?
Well, it could be, and this could be a real wake-up call, and I'm hearing it through my pieces that I do with you and with others and my Twitter page. All Americans should be very, very fearful to what rights are next and what's at stake for them, whether it's women, whether it's LGBTQ community, whatever, if it's, race issues, if it's all sorts of things. When Clarence Thomas went after this, he was very clear, and it's frightening what we're seeing in America right now. I'll tell you, it feels rather dubious just being here. I mean, I love my country. I will always be there, but we need more like-minded Americans to get up. I mean, you see Liz Cheney, and you see Kinzinger, and they're Republicans who were heroes And the two ladies that were election workers who were gone after by Rudy Giuliani and the president and besmirched. And they stood there because they really cared for this country. Right. And other members of the Justice Department and the state parties, they went and they pledged their lives to this freedom of this country. And Donald Trump has thrown a monkey wrench in it, and the Supreme Court has picked it up, and they used it to clobber freedom-loving Americans.
Well, it's not the only Supreme Court decision this week, and we only have a minute left to talk about it. But of course, I mean, the extraordinary ruling, I say extraordinary to us in the UK and to the rest of the civilized world, that they extended the case of Heller, which is the individual right to keep a firearm in your home, to allow, as a matter of right, people to carry a firearm in public. That's now an enshrined right by the Supreme Court. That was an extraordinary moment, particularly given, if you read the opening of the judgment of Justice Breyer, the tens of thousands of people killed by firearms in America.
I mean, I tell my British friends this: it's hard to imagine walking into a pub with a 6-gun on your hip, but we can do that now.
You'd get, just so you know, in a matter of law, just by doing that, you'd get a minimum stay of 5 years in prison.
Well, good for you. I appreciate my friends across the pond. Now it will be very difficult for states to keep their citizens safe. You can have open carry is just crazy. And the governor of New York has fought it, and the attorney general in New York will fight it, and there will be states fighting this, and hopefully, more stable and American sense of right will that will be survive. Yeah. And our country will come out of this very dark day.
Well, I hope so, too. I, as everybody else who's America-phile, that, loves its culture, wants America, needs, as the world does, America as a world superpower to succeed and to thrive. Hope that your vision of catastrophic doom doesn't come to pass, and that the pendulum swings back to optimism. As ever, it's very interesting to hear from you, Professor JC, from across the pond. You're listening to me here on Talk TV, live from the Talk Radio studios.